Welcome back to our series where we are revisiting the invention of photography and the stories of people who help make things happen. As this is part 5 of the series, if you missed the first episodes, you may want to pause this video and start from part 1. In this episode, we look at how the art world changed as a result of photography's invention. Advances in things related to photography started to come at a quicker pace. Born in Edinburgh, Scotland, Mungo Ponton was another person that could be considered to be a polymath. He studied law and became a lawyer and was also an artist, inventor, author, and chemist. He began experimenting with the calotype process after Fox Talbot had published some of his early work in 1839. He observed the light-sensitizing effect of potassium dichromate, a hexavalent chromium compound that is toxic, carcinogenic, and a strong oxidizing agent often used in labs to clean glassware, among other things. In May 29, 1839, he presented his unpatented findings to the Scottish Society of Arts and would also publish in the Edinburgh New Philosophical Journal. Fox Talbot and others experimented further with his discovery and went on to patent their work. Dichromate sensitization provided the basis for the future process of carbon printing and gum bichromate. Further uses of his work were found in photoresists used in the printing industry as well as in other industrial applications. A third-generation Parisian lens maker in a company founded by his grandfather, Charles Chevalier started his own optics company in 1832. Chevalier had independent interactions with both Nicephore Niepce and Louis Daguerre, and when Daguerre came looking for a lens for some work that he was doing, Chevalier gave him the address for Niepce. One of the problems that lens makers of the day were having was to specifically reduce chromatic aberrations. As visible spectrum passes through a lens, there is a failure to focus all colors on the same spot, causing purple fringing and giving the image a soft look. This had to do with the refractive index of the glass being used at the time. Chevalier greatly reduced this phenomenon by making a two-element lens using two different types of glass. This type of lens is called an achromatic lens. When Alphonse Giroux was making his camera for Louis Daguerre, Chevalier supplied him with a 400mm focal length achromatic lens for a telescope which Giroux reversed the mount on so that it would focus on the objects that were closer. Unfortunately, the lens then had spherical aberrations, where light passing through different points on the lens causes a failure to focus on the same spot. Giroux got around this problem by using a very small aperture of f/16, which necessitated long exposure times. Not wanting to miss out on things, Chevalier invented the first folding box camera in 1840, something that made the camera easier to transport and was a feature copied on many cameras built in the future. He also made microscopes, prescription glasses, and other instruments. Paul Delaroche was a renowned French painter of his day and gained notoriety painting historical scenes from the past. His paintings had real-to-life detail in them, but they were altered from the reality in order to tell a story. On August 10, 1839, the secret about photography was made public. Delaroche saw with his own eyes an image that Louis Daguerre made and proclaimed that the painting is dead from this day. Unless the artist had a sponsor or patron, artists made a living by painting portraits. The camera could now do the same thing in a fraction of the time and cost, so painters had to pivot. Some became photographers. Some painted scenes that were depicted in photographs, a point of contention among painters of the day. When photography was invented, it impacted society and the artistic world in ways that Daguerre could not have foreseen. By being the ultimate representation of reality, photography unshackled painters from the need to meticulously paint reality. As art was in high demand in society in the 1800s, photography allowed for more widespread access to both art and people to have their own portraits made. For decades, painters and photographers have been looking over each other's shoulders and trying to copy each other's styles. Realistic painters replaced their idealistic images like the ones de Laroche made and began painting real-life events. After that, photography shaped the movement of Impressionism and allowed painting to stray from realism. Impressionism bridged the previous movements and modernism. Many artists explored countless new ways to express themselves. Artists looked at the human experience and used different ways to perceive reality, which created revolutionary works of art. Photographers followed the trends and would try to recreate things like minimalism and use various camera techniques like intentional camera movement, multiple exposures, panning, to help fine art photography gain recognition as an art form as well. An English soldier, geologist, and inventor, Captain Levitt Landon Boscawen Ibbetson, became an early adopter of photography and macrophotography to make images of fossils and other small objects. He was attempting to photograph a coral at 12.5 times magnification, and even though the coral wasn't going anywhere, he realized that he needed more light. In order to do so, he ignited calcium oxide in order to get the intensity of light he needed. This type of light is often referred to as limelight, as calcium oxide is also called quicklime. His illustration of a fossil, transverse section of a madrepore, in the Westminster Review of September 1840 is credited with being the first example of the use of limelight to shorten exposure times when making daguerreotypes. This is also another example of how photographers potentially risk their own safety in order to make an image, and that tradition continues to this day, as there are still some who will put themselves in harm's way in order to get the photo. This is what the limelight flash looked like. Of course, people weren't satisfied with the length of time it took to make an exposure, even though it was down to minutes with all of the various tweaks that were happening. English chemist and photographer John Frederick Goddard began experimenting with other halogens, namely bromine. He found that the addition of bromine gas in combination with iodine vapors increased the sensitivity of the plate to light, allowing to reduce the time it would take to make a daguerreotype image. The equivalent in today's term would be to boost the ISO of the film or sensor. Please join us next time when we break out the silverware, gild more than just a lily, a red light district, blue and moons, as well as photographing without a license, and more. We look forward to you being with us.